Was a pilot kidnapped by a UFO? The plane vanished without a trace, but some say an ultra-secret tracking station has it all on tape.
There's no question in my mind that Fred was grabbed.
The missing pilot mystery. Then,
He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain.
a vision from 100 miles away locates a lost hiker. The miracle rescue on the next Sightings. Was a pilot kidnapped by a UFO? The plane vanished without a trace, but some say an ultra-secret tracking station has it all on tape.
There's no question in my mind that Fred was grabbed.
The missing pilot mystery on the next Sightings.
He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain.
A vision from 100 miles away locates a lost hiker. The miracle rescue on the next Sightings.
He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain.
The miracle rescue of the lost hiker on Sightings.
There's no question in my mind that Fred was grabbed. He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain. There's no question in my mind that Fred was grabbed. He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain. He pointed right to the site and he said she's right up on top of the mountain.
On this edition of Sightings, on a perfectly clear day in 1978, Freddie Valentich encountered a UFO at 5,000 feet. He hasn't been heard from since.
From the southwest, all shiny and metallic. My God, she comes at me!
Could Australia's top-secret Pine Gap tracking station hold the answer?
Your program has got a hold of a tiger by the tail here when you start looking into Pine Gap.
In the rugged Sierra Mountains, this man's miraculous vision accomplished what 100 rescue workers couldn't.
Something was just pushing me the whole way. It was like I was chosen to go.
The Air Force says it's simply a research tool. Others say the military finally has the ultimate Doomsday machine.
It's got all the marks of Dr. Strangelove on it.
Last summer, the kids who attend this grade school all claimed they encountered an alien.
Why would 62 children lie?
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Every year, one grieving father in Australia makes a pilgrimage to the place where his son disappeared. Even though Freddie Valentich has been missing for close to 20 years, his father has not given up hope. He believes that one day the extraterrestrials who took his son away may decide to bring him back to Earth. He was a 20-year-old pilot with the Australian Air Training Corps who took off on October 21st, 1978 and was never seen again. Freddie Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in Victoria, bound for Cape Otway on King Island. 45 minutes into the flight, the control tower in Cape Otway received an alarming SOS. Valentich was on a collision course with a strange craft he could not identify. According to the tower, the radar screen was clear. For 6 minutes, Valentich continued to insist that a UFO was approaching him at a high rate of speed. Then his radio went dead.
Is there traffic below 5,000?
No traffic.
Traffic above me at 5,000?
None. And none, repeat, none near your position and altitude.
Tower, you must recheck. Above, no, below me, a terrible brightness.
Nothing. Nothing.
And then he was gone. Fred Valentich and his airplane disappeared without a trace. He is considered legally dead by everyone but his father. 17 years after Fred's disappearance, Guido Valentich still makes an annual pilgrimage to Cape Otway, where he believes he lost his eldest son to a UFO.
That particular day, I was supposed to be with my son on the airplanes, and I feel a little bit sorry that I didn't go, because in my mind I felt that if I would have been with him, perhaps, one would say, the situation could turn out slightly different.
Why would a father return here every year on the anniversary of his son's disappearance and reflect on the possibility that his child had a close encounter with a UFO? Because, Guido Valentich says, knowing Freddie, it's the only explanation that makes sense. He was hardworking and honest, a straight shooter who knew how to fly.
His future was to be a commercial pilot. He had about close to 200 hours flying. The last time I spoke to him was that morning, the 21st of October, at the breakfast table. And as he went out, I remember Dick was saying to me, you know, the last word he said, "Oh, it's got to be a beautiful day to fly today."
Freddie's flight plan that warm, cloudless evening took him over the infamous Bass Strait, an area known as the Australian Bermuda Triangle. There had been other disappearances, reports of mechanical failures, and magnetic anomalies. But Valentich was the first pilot to ever report into the control tower that he was in the presence of a threatening UFO. His voice told the controller to take this SOS seriously.
Tower, it is not an aircraft. Repeat, not an aircraft known to us. Unidentified vehicle is a green light at terminus of upper cylinder. Outer projection appears to be aluminium or some other light metal. Windows are unmistakable, and I see 4 other lights from the interior. No, not windows. Some other observation area. Tower, he's playing a game.
The actual tapes of Freddie's communication with the tower were considered top secret, and Guido Valentich was allowed to listen to his son's last words only one time. Soon after, the tapes were erased. A version of the tape transcript was leaked to the media by anonymous airport personnel.
Valentich gave a complete description of the type of the craft, the shape, the portholes, what it was doing, how it was buzzing him, circling him, going off at great speeds, disappearing, coming back. And he was in constant contact with the tower over this period of time until 7:14, when all of a sudden he said this was approaching him and bathed him in a green light, the plane and everything. And then there was a metal scraping sound, and he just disappeared off the face of the earth, the plane and everything.
You believe me, Log?
Sure do. We know it's Valentich.
Thank you, Tower. In proceeding at a speed of 110, at the same course moving up to 4,000. Wait, engine faltering. I've got rough idling, she may con. She's coming up from rear at tremendous burst. His green light is all over here. It's not an aircraft. Going up to 5,000, 6,000. Long wingless metallic tube spouting flame. I feel scorching. I feel...
229, we hear something tearing. 229, please reply.
When the tower lost radio contact, a search plane was sent to the point of last contact, 12 miles off the coast of Melbourne. There was no sign of Valentich. They searched by air, by land, and by sea. But after 3 weeks, searchers had found nothing, and the operation was suspended.
21st of October, because it's one day which I can never forget. I like to go down to respect and study some of the area when this phenomena occurred, and I'll be able to see some strange thing perhaps on that particular day.
Officially, there were no eyewitnesses to Freddie Valentich's disappearance nearly 20 years ago. But a small group of UFO researchers claim there were eyewitnesses working here, working for the United States government. This is the Pine Gap Research Facility, a tracking station located in the Australian outback. And according to researcher Robert Dean, Pine Gap knows more than it's willing to tell about Fred Valentich.
They can track anything from a basketball-sized meteor. There's no question in my mind that the Pine Gap facility tracked that object. They were tracking Fred. They were tracking that object. God knows when the truth will come out. But I think Fred was grabbed. And I know Pine Gap must have monitored the whole damn thing because we monitor everything.
According to Dean and others, the Pine Gap tracking station did much more than simply track the last moments of Fred Valentich's life. Did officials there have a hand in the death of an innocent man? More on this story when Sightings returns.
Next, the Pine Gap connection to the disappearance of Freddie Valentich.
The real secret behind it involves the alien reality and UFOs.
A fiery, oblong UFO, no wings, no observable propulsion system, soaring above Australia at unbelievable speed. It was the last thing pilot Fred Valentich saw before he disappeared off the face of the Earth. That was 17 years ago, and from that day to this, his father and a handful of dedicated researchers have searched for information about who or what was controlling that UFO.
229, are you on a collision course? Over.
No, it's still at my side. It can hang motionless, orbit over and under me.
Proceed, 229.
Wingless tube she is. Maybe 100 feet long, with a green blast, sometimes green vapor.
These were Freddie Valentich's exact words to an air traffic controller when he encountered an unknown object over Australia's Bass Strait. He disappeared minutes later. Now, a small but convincing group of researchers believe that Valentich's encounter must have been observed and was then covered up by a super-secret government tracking facility at Pine Gap, Australia.
Anything that comes in from out there in space, on the planet, is immediately picked up, whether it's a meteor or whatever. If it's one of our own satellites, if it's something we don't know, immediately they pick it up. They monitor it, they photograph it, they track it. That's what Pine Gap does.
Robert Dean is a retired United States Army Command Sergeant Major. In his 27-year military career, Dean claims that he was involved in several top-secret military operations concerning UFOs.
Your program has got a hold of a tiger by the tail here when you start looking into Pine Gap. And I must be honest with you that the Pine Gap facility and all that it's involved with is probably one of the most secret installations in the world. The NSA is involved, the CIA is involved, and the National Reconnaissance Office is part of that. They call it a joint space defense facility, but it's a hell of a lot more than that.
But other experts insist the location is simply an advanced satellite communications facility.
Most governments don't even publicly admit that they are involved in satellite intelligence operations. That's probably about as close as any government is ever going to go to saying that they're involved in signals intelligence collection functions.
Well, I can tell you that as a result of 30 years of my personal research, the fact that I am ex-military, the fact that I still have a bunch of old cronies in sensitive places, the real secret behind it, the real undercover unannounced, unpublished operation involves the alien reality and UFOs.
The Pine Gap Research Facility has never commented publicly on a possible link between their operations and Freddie Valentich's disappearance. But this photograph suggests there is a link. It was taken in the same area at nearly the same time Valentich disappeared. If the eyes and ears of Pine Gap are as powerful as Robert Dean suggests, they must know something about the UFO snapped by amateur photographer Roy Manifold.
It was quite a clear night. It was cool. We had the fire going in the front room, and everything just seemed normal that night. And I'd taken the photographs, and I'd taken the 6 consecutive ones. And I'd walked inside, and I'd just come inside. Oh, I was only been there about maybe 5 minutes, and I heard an aeroplane pass overhead.
The airplane was Freddie's Cessna, just moments before Valentich's fateful UFO encounter. And later, when Roy had his film developed, along with the beautiful sunset, there was this important clue to Freddie's mysterious disappearance.
He got this object here on his 6th frame, and it was quite strange that he thought that at one instant there was something wrong with the camera, but then when he took back to the laboratory at Kaidak, they assured him that that object there, it's nothing wrong with it. He's definitely got an object on it.
Computer analysis and enhancement of the UFO in Manifold's photograph reveals that the object was a solid, metallic, reflective sphere, approximately 70 feet in diameter. The fact that this picture was taken just minutes before Manifold heard Valentich's airplane suggests this may be the craft Freddie saw moments before he vanished without a trace. Air Corps officials, however, vehemently disagree.
Some of the experts said that he got disorientated and that he was flying upside down. But the Cessna 182 has got the petrol, or gas, aviation gas, is in the wings, and it's gravity fed to the motor. So 49 seconds of flying upside down, the motor would have cut out. He was talking for 6.5 minutes. So that tells you he wasn't flying upside down, he wasn't disorientated.
Now are you all clear, 229? And there's no strange craft, right? Could be a miscalculation. Did you hear a vibratory?
Tower, heard nothing but my own sound.
Electrical phenomena, 229. Perhaps ball lightning can do strange things. Mirage is not uncommon with storm flare.
Storm flare far off to east, Tower. Not vapor trail either. Holy, here he comes from the southwest. All shiny and metallic. My God, she comes at me!
Knowing Frederick, he wouldn't deviate rules and regulation. I'm quite certain that he would not go on that radio and inquire about to the air traffic controller what he's got around him, unless it was something really worthwhile to ask, because to him it wasn't a conventional aircraft, therefore something else, and could have been extraterrestrial. But the time will tell.
For 17 years, a family has searched for answers, and now they hope that Pine Gap will share its information concerning Freddie, the UFO in this photograph, and one of the most puzzling encounters in UFO history. Only 2 pilots are believed to have disappeared as a result of their aerial contact with a UFO. Fred Valentich and Thomas Mantell, a military pilot from Louisville, Kentucky. The consensus among ufologists is that these incidents occurred not because the UFOs were aggressive, but because pilots have never been taught what to do in the event of a UFO encounter.
Next, the ultimate celebration of mind over matter. Are we getting too big for our planet? Later, an extraordinary alien encounter in Africa.
Here are some of the stories Sightings is following in the news. In a recent book titled 7 Experiments That Could Change the World, author Rupert Sheldrake explores new and intriguing theories about the psychic bond between humans and animals. In Big Sur, California, English researcher Rupert Sheldrake recently presented the findings of a scientific study he conducted, which validates what many pet owners already sense. The that they have a unique psychic bond with their pets.
I think the psychic abilities of animals are very common. I would explain it in terms of morphic fields, and they're the kinds of fields that connect packs of wolves together or flocks of birds. I think that these are the basis of the bonds between pets and people.
Sheldrake spent 14 years studying animal behavior at Cambridge University and found that morphic fields may explain those uncanny premonitions animals display when it's time to go to the vet, or when you're about to leave on a trip, or even when a family member is in danger.
If we can show that psychic connections between pets and their owners are real, we have to take seriously the existence of psychic phenomena in general.
I think that there is, if you want to use the term telepathic, communication, I think there is an undeniable bond between Papillon and Rachel.
Mindy Gwynn knows the power of animal telepathy. Her daughter Rachel was only 5 days old when their dog Papillon somehow sensed danger as Rachel lay sleeping in her crib.
Papillon came into the bathroom while I was in the shower, and he was frantic, enough to the point where I knew he was trying to tell me something. I threw on my clothes and I followed him to the bedroom, and that was where he put his front paws up on the crib and he barked at the baby. And when I looked in at her, I realized that she was a little bit blue.
On closer examination, Mindy realized that her infant daughter had stopped breathing. Mindy tried desperately to revive her.
My daughter Amanda called 911, and I was still doing mouth-to-mouth when the ambulance got there, and I carried Rachel out and jumped in the back of the ambulance.
Rachel survived. After a week in the hospital, Mindy brought her home to the friend she believes saved the baby's life.
I reaffirmed my belief in the bonds between animals and people at that point. I remember hugging the dog for a good long time, because this dog just really did more than I can ever say thank you for.
Most people accept these things. Science at present denies them. And I think opening up science in a way that these things are taken on board can help open up our view of the world in a really dramatic way. I think it would change science.
In Thailand, more than 5,000 people from around the world gathered for this year's Phuket Vegetarian Festival, an ancient tradition demonstrating the powers of mind over matter. Men from the area, believed to be spirit mediums, display a superhuman threshold for pain, walking over hot coals and piercing their bodies with an unbelievable range of sharp implements. Even close up, their faces display no signs of pain, not even a wince, as they endure piercing with 3-inch diameter bamboo poles. How is this possible? Dr. Joshua Prager, director of the UCLA Pain Medicine Center, believes it may be a result of the amazing mind-body connection.
We now know that pain is not something that is just a sensation in a part of the body or parts of the body, but is actually an entire experience. Information that comes in has to pass through a gate, and that gate can be opened or closed by various phenomena.
The mediums at the festival use self-hypnosis to will themselves into an altered state of consciousness, and such a state seems to act as a natural anesthetic against what would normally be excruciating pain.
People who are having a religious experience are often very close to trance state, and so somehow they are teaching themselves, or they have the ability, when they work themselves up into the trance state, to close the gate.
Dr. Prager believes that the ability to withstand pain varies from person to person based on their genetic predisposition. But he also believes that the Phuket Festival does demonstrate that everyone can improve their own pain threshold to some degree. In San Diego, California, one engineer is issuing a warning about a new threat to Earth's ever-waning resources, and not only from our growing numbers, but also our size. Humans are getting too big.
By 2050, we're talking about maybe 12 billion people in the world. We have 6 billion right now. Now, it makes a big difference whether that 12 billion people averages 100 pounds or 200 pounds.
In the last 100 years, the median height has grown by 6 inches, and the median weight has increased by more than 50 pounds. And the larger we become, the more natural resources we consume.
But there's no doubt that we live on a finite Earth. There are finite resources, and the Earth is going to change.
Samaras warns that unless we begin downsizing our population, we will use up most of our farmland and all of our petroleum supplies midway through the next century.
We're getting more people, and we're getting bigger people. I think we can see that the problem is stupendous in terms of the threat to our survival.
We'll have more stories from the news next time. Now, here's what's coming up on Sightings.
When Millie McGregor was lost for 3 days in the High Sierra, this man saw it all from 100 miles away.
He pointed right to the site. He said, she's right up on top of that mountain.
Later, could this device end life on our planet?
In the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, character Roy Neary becomes obsessed with a vision, plagues his mind, his dreams, even sculpts it in his mashed potatoes. In real life, a California horseshoer named Randy Spears also had a vision. It plagued his mind and his dreams. And as Sightings correspondent Carla Wald reports, when Randy pursued his vision, something very strange happened.
The spectacular Sierra Nevada range extends almost the entire length of California. These are mountains of unparalleled beauty. Along its rugged trails, you can easily find yourself lost in thought, or as even experienced hikers know, just plain lost.
I love the mountains. I also love waterfalls and lakes, and I like to sometimes be by myself.
Millie McGregor has been hiking and camping in these Sierras for much of her life. On the morning of September 4th, 1995, she set off on a simple day hike. She told her husband she'd be home before dark. She wasn't.
After I was on the trail for several hours, I started having chest pain.
Millie was dizzy and disoriented. She lost the trail and couldn't find her way down the mountain.
The places I was going, they would run out, or they'd come into a big high canyon. It was real rough terrain.
Millie's spirits and her water supply were running low. She was tired, frightened, and cold. When day turned to night, the temperature dropped below freezing. For search and rescue teams, it was a race against time. How extensive was the search?
There were about 100 people involved, mostly volunteer units. There were about 50 mounted units, and the rest were foot units, motorcycle, tricycle, and dogs.
After 3 bone-chilling nights, Millie was still missing. Search helicopters were equipped with infrared radar, but hope for her survival was dwindling. Millie's husband feared the worst.
After 3 days and nights up there, I was just about ready to give her up, yeah.
On day 3, over 100 miles outside the search area, horseshoer Randy Spears had a strange, haunting vision he did not understand.
I just kind of flashed on search and rescue and kind of pictured a hillside. And for some reason, my hand was in front of it. I was basically pointing, but I had my whole hand up.
It wasn't until he got home that Randy learned of Millie's disappearance. His wife, Shelley, helped Randy in his search for the mountaintop in his vision.
When I looked on the map, it just kind of all came back to me, that hillside, and it just struck me right then that I knew right where she was. So I just kind of decided I had to go.
What did Randy say to you when he came home?
He told me it was somebody's grandma, and she was very cold, and she needed to be found. And he knew who she was, and they were wasting time.
It wasn't just a nagging feeling. Randy dropped everything to pursue his vision.
I generally don't like to skip out of work, but it was strong enough that I just canceled everything and went.
Randy felt he had a job to do and convinced his best friend, Frank Smith, to join him in his quest. At 1:30 in the morning, they set off to find a woman they had never met.
As we approached the area where the search party was taking place, it's like you could see the excitement on his face, or the seriousness, I don't know how to describe it, but he goes, that's where she is. She's on that hillside. She's on that mountain. And he held his hand up, and he goes, I don't know why I'm doing this. But behind his ring finger is on that mountain is where he said she was.
At dawn, Randy and Frank saddled up their mules and rode to the rescue station. Randy revealed his vision to James Marks.
Oh, I was a little taken aback just because, I mean, here we all are, 100 people. We've been there for 3 days, and here comes someone who just says, I'm very, very determined, saying, I know right where she's at, and I'm going to go get her.
Did he actually point out to you where he thought he'd find Mildred?
Oh, exactly. He pointed right to the site. He kind of framed it in with his hands, and he said, she's right up on top of that mountain.
Was there any doubt in your mind that you were going to find Mildred?
No doubt. No doubt. Absolutely none. They didn't have the same map that Randy had.
All the way up the mountain, Randy never wavered from his mysterious internal map.
Something was just pushing me the whole way. It was like I was chosen to go.
Incredibly, Millie McGregor, exhausted and close to dehydration, was also being drawn to the top of the mountain.
I don't know how much longer, you know, that I'm going to be able to do this, so I thought, I had a notion when I got to the top. For some reason, I thought there would be somebody there.
How long was it that you were sitting there before you saw this mirage coming towards you, these two men on mules?
I don't think it was more than 5 minutes.
I couldn't believe it. She just walked right out. You know, we just run right into each other.
Randy signaled to Frank that his vision quest was over. Millie was finally in safe hands.
Rescue 6, affirmative. She was just brought into camp by one of the horse teams. She's in good shape, and everything, this has got a happy ending.
As they rode into the search area, everyone just kind of looked at them and they were stunned. I don't think they could believe that he actually had them.
Millie was escorted to a waiting ambulance. Her heroes disappeared before Millie's family could thank them.
I feel very well and very thankful.
You give me back my wife. No. What can you say to a fella to give your partner back to you, you know?
Thanks doesn't seem to be enough.
You excited?
Oh, yeah, very excited.
I accompanied Millie and Jim on a trip back to Northern California so they could thank the man whose vision had saved Millie's life.
Look who's here.
Hi.
How we doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. You were the one that let your crazy husband come. We were just talking about last night. I don't even think that I would encourage my husband to go.
Well, I have no choice.
Yeah,
so Frank, head up, smile.
She must be a special lady or something. Whatever it was, it's mighty powerful, you know. That's all I can figure out.
The whole experience is one that you certainly never forget. It's like sometimes in your life things happen that change you, and you'll never be quite the same again.
Mildred McGregor also told Carnival that she wants to start hiking again, but she's made a promise to her family that she won't go hiking alone.
Next, it's called HAARP, and one of the things it's designed to do is burn holes in the ionosphere.
We're worried about the ozone layer. The ozone layer is nothing compared to what HAARP can do.
In 1993, the FAA started warning pilots to stay away from a certain section of airspace over Alaska. The U.S. government was experimenting with a new breed of high-altitude electronic technology that was significantly altering the Alaskan airspace. The experiments continue to this day, and critics are warning that this project could have global effects that will destroy our planet. In Alaska, the rugged, pristine wilderness is timeless, most of it remaining just as it has for thousands of years. In the midst of all this natural beauty, just outside the small town of Gakona, stands an enormous and seemingly harmless antenna farm. It is a $100 million Air Force project known as HAARP, and critics of the soon-to-be completed facility charge it just may turn out to be the ultimate doomsday machine.
It's got all the marks of Dr. Strangelove on it.
HAARP is an acronym for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. According to program manager John Hesher, HAARP is a research facility designed to study the ionosphere.
All the military have communications, surveillance, navigation systems whose paths either traverse the ionosphere or reflect from it. And so we need to be very careful about what we know about it and how we study it. What we're interested in is what is the effect of a large input of energy on the ionosphere.
The ionosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It is part of an electromagnetic field that keeps out harmful solar and cosmic radiation. One visible effect of the sun's rays hitting the ionosphere is the aurora borealis, known as the northern lights. The ionosphere also plays a vital role in worldwide radio communication.
The first transmission of radio waves across the ocean were quite a surprise when it was first done. People thought there'd be no chance to transmit the signals across the ocean by wireless. And in fact, what the ionosphere does is act like a mirror. And so you transmit a signal and it bounces off the ionosphere and then it bounces off the Earth.
When HAARP is fully operational, it will transmit extremely powerful blasts of high-frequency radio waves directly up into the atmosphere, superheating the electrons that make up the ionosphere. This will cause them to disperse, effectively punching a hole in the ionosphere.
But after you turn the instrument off, this thing kind of moves around and it gets replenished. And within a few minutes, it's back to where you can't even detect that there's a hole anymore.
The Air Force says that manipulating the ionosphere and studying the effect will allow them to improve the efficiency of communications, navigation, and surveillance systems. But researchers outside the military see HAARP as a high-tech weapon with global implications.
The way I see HAARP as it is right now, it is a premier, top-notch, high-energy radio physics experiment, and it has definite military applications.
Journalist Mark Farmer lives in Alaska and has written about the potential impact of HAARP for both Jane's Defense Weekly and Popular Science magazine. He believes that HAARP will be used to take giant X-rays of Earth.
Earth-penetrating tomography is a technique using extremely low-frequency radio waves. Today in geophysical probing, scientists will use explosives or a machine that thumps the ground to produce these waves, but HAARP will stimulate the auroral electrojet to make an antenna thousands of miles long that will emit these ELF waves.
Farmer's research indicates that the extremely low-frequency waves would be capable of penetrating several kilometers into the Earth, ferreting out nuclear storage facilities and other underground military installations.
This is producing surveillance systems able to detect stealthy cruise missiles and aircraft. These are systems that will enable us to communicate at higher data rates and at greater distances with our ballistic missile submarines.
While the Air Force insists HAARP is not an offensive weapon and is necessary for continuing national security, Alaskan native Nick Begich proposes a different scenario in this new book.
The things that we found in other Air Force documents, one in particular was a document put together in '82. The document was called Low Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, with a foreword by none other than Newt Gingrich. In one section spoke about using radio frequency radiation transmitters for disrupting human thinking, for basically debilitating troops invisibly by being able to bombard them with radio frequency that was tuned to just the right frequency, in just the right waveform, so as to totally disrupt their mental process and basically debilitate those troops.
Because of HAARP's potential to disrupt the Earth's magnetic field, many observers are concerned that it will damage the biomagnetic sensors that migratory animals like salmon and birds depend upon.
Anything that HAARP can do to the magnetic field is orders of magnitude smaller than the natural variations of the Earth's field. So I would have to say, no, there's nothing we can do to affect the salmon.
But what generates the most concern by far is HAARP's ability to tamper with and punch holes in the ionosphere.
The thing that one of the Air Force documents points out is that they want to use this heater to create enough energy in the ionosphere to get a runaway effect up to the next stabilizing level, whatever that might be.
It's precisely whatever that might be that worries Dr. Patrick Flanagan, a physicist who believes the ionosphere is extremely fragile.
The ionosphere is a chaotic system that is on the edge of instability. So the trigger point for HAARP would be that energy and that frequency which throws the ionosphere into chaos. In other words, it would be that point which throws it over the edge.
For example, it is believed that a hole in the Earth's ozone layer has caused an increase in infrared radiation, contributing to the melting of the polar ice caps and forcing New Zealand children to wear protective clothing to school. Flanagan and others believe the potential danger from a hole in the ionosphere is much greater.
It could create a change in the ionospheric shield that protects us from cosmic radiation. We're worried about the ozone layer. The ozone layer is nothing compared to what HAARP could do. You know, we're worried about ultraviolet light. That's just a very harmless ray compared to some of those energy streams or particles that are coming from outer space that are being deflected by this natural shield around the Earth. And this is what HAARP wants to play with.
Critics worry that HAARP has been placed in the hands of too few, and that international debate is necessary to fully explore all the potential dangers that this project may soon unleash, a proposal in which the Air Force has shown little interest to date.
Once we open this box, and it is a veritable Pandora's box, we're not going to be able to close it. And of course, once you acquire a technology, you want bigger and better aspects of it. And then we come into the questions of whether or not, if we go big, if we go better, if we're going to cause damage to our planet.
Proponents of HAARP insist the danger has been grossly exaggerated. The project continues to move forward as scheduled and will be fully operational by 1997.
Next, they started an international controversy with their story of extraterrestrial contact at a remote African school.
I have seen what I've seen.
At the recent International UFO Congress held in Sheffield, England, Sightings team members heard their first account of a major UFO sighting in Africa. It was particularly intriguing because the eyewitnesses were school children who had not had any exposure to popular press accounts of UFOs. On September 14th, 1994, something flashed through the sky in southern Africa, alarming a few and confounding everyone. It was a UFO. 2 days later, 62 school children in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, claimed they had seen a UFO land in the schoolyard. It was dismissed as fantasy until one UFO researcher began insisting that the children were telling the truth.
This object landed with the 3 or 4 things beside it, and then a door opened, and this little man got out and had on a black suit.
Cynthia Hind is one of Africa's leading ufologists. She interviewed the children the day after their encounter and had them draw pictures of the strange visitors they had seen.
They were very slim, the suit was black, but it was the eyes that was frightening.
In 1995, Hind brought worldwide attention to the Ruwa children when she presented their case at the 8th International UFO Congress in Sheffield, England.
Why don't they try and form some sort of panel? Not necessarily Americans, it could be United Nations, to check out these stories. Why would 62 children lie?
In Ruwa, a few weeks after the conference, a full on-site investigation began under the direction of Harvard professor of psychiatry, Dr. John Mack, who is now producing a documentary film about the Ruwa encounter.
It was silver, and the ring around it was red.
It was red. Did light come from the whole thing, or?
There are lights around here.
Lights along the edge there. How many of the strange beings did you see?
I saw one over here. They had eyes like that, and they were kind of just like looking at us. They were like kind of astonished at what we were. I felt scared.
It felt scary? What was scary about it?
Well, I felt scared because I've never seen such a person like that before.
They experienced very powerful encounters with these beings and were left with the rather disturbing fact that this seems to be what it is. And it seems to have no other psychiatric explanation.
More disturbing still was what the children told Dr. Mack about the purpose of the alien visit. It was a dire warning Mack had heard more than 100 times before from people in the United States, half a world away. And yet their doomsday scenario was being repeated to the last detail by the Ruwa children.
Fungi, what do you imagine is his reason for visiting Earth?
I think it's about something that's going to happen.
Something that's going to happen?
Yes. What I thought was maybe the world's going to end. Maybe they're telling us the world's going to end. I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this world and we mustn't get too technologized.
How did that get communicated to you?
I don't really know, but it just popped up in my head.
Pollution?
Yes. He never said anything. It's just that the face is the eyes. They looked horrible.
And the eyes, the horrible look, had that information that you just told me?
Yes.
Now, the people in Africa don't have television. They might have a radio, but I can tell you the media don't deal with UFOs there. They're but nervous of it. So where would they pick it up? Is it a mass telepathy?
While some researchers are suggesting the Ruwa sightings were created by mass hallucination, Dr. Mack hears a different story from the children.
If someone were to say, well, you know, you just have a lively imagination and you made this up, what would you say?
I haven't been influenced by any of my friends. I have seen what I've seen.
Because of political instability in many African nations, it's been impossible to get an accurate accounting of UFO sightings there. Ufologists are eager to investigate several reputed hotspots, but field investigations in Mozambique and Rwanda have been put on hold.
Ghosts. UFOs. The unexplained. Dramatic stories of the paranormal from the files of Sightings. A new paperback book available now wherever books are sold. From Fireside Books.
Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
Next on Sci-Fi, Dark Shadows. Tonight on Farscape, Chiara goes to the extreme.
I want to jump.
What are you talking about? Sci-Fi's Farscape, tonight at 8, only on Sci-Fi.